I'm Sarah Freeman, Managing Editor with the Business and Finance Media Group. I'm delighted to welcome you today to our second Business Show Virtual Summit in partnership with Explio. We launched the Business Show webinar series and summit last year during the height of the global pandemic. The object? To support industry through the unknown landscape that lay ahead. Now, with the ongoing vaccine rollout and the end of lockdown in sight, we're back to take you through the next phase of shaping the future of Irish business. We have a great lineup of expert speakers and moderators joining us today across two virtual stages. You'll hear from business leaders who've experienced extreme economic challenges and are continuing to navigate these times and emerge stronger. We'll learn the strategies used to pivot a company's offering during these unprecedented times. What have people done to save their businesses, and how can you emulate their approach? I'd like to thank our moderators and speakers who've given up their time to support industry by joining us at this solutions-based summit today. Make sure to avail of the many networking opportunities to engage and connect with your peers in our networking lounge. And don't forget to visit the exhibition hall and marketplace, where our event partners have exclusive offers and cost savings available to support your businesses through the coming months. If you wish to schedule a consultation, please visit their individual booth to book a time slot. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our headline partner Explio, who've supported the summit since its conception and worked with us to deliver today's event. I'd also like to thank our energy partner Electric Ireland and all of our platinum partners for their continued support. IBEC, KPMG, National Broadband Ireland, Immedis, Skillnet Ireland and our charity partners Suicide or Survive and all other partners. Don't worry, if you're busy networking and miss a session, all of the content will be available online from tomorrow and will remain online for 90 days. Just use your same event login details to access, and by all means share the link with colleagues who may be interested in some of the talks. Join the online conversation by using the hashtag Rebooting Ireland or hashtag TBS. Now, during our morning sessions on the evolution stage, you'll hear from Professor Luke O'Neill talking life post-COVID, what that might look like. And I'll be joined by Anne O'Leary, CEO of Vodafone, Paul Kelly, CEO of Fáilte Ireland, along with John Power, CEO and founder of Aerogen, for our leadership session. On the elevation stage, you'll hear a fireside with David McCourt, Chairman of National Broadband Ireland, and a session around expanding the tech ecosystem with Patrick Walsh, CEO of Dogpatch Labs, and Ian Brown, COO of Ignite Northern Ireland, amongst others. Do check out the schedule now and choose which session you'd like to hear. With over 70 speakers across two virtual stages, there's a wide variety of content to choose from, all curated and tailored to enable businesses emerge stronger. And with that, have a great day. My name is Sarah Freeman. I'm Managing Editor of Business and Finance Media Group. Thank you for joining us today for the opening session of the Business Show entitled Shaping the Future of Irish Business, Voices of Industry. Make sure to join the conversation online on Twitter and Facebook at Business Show IRL, and be sure to use the hashtag Rebooting Ireland. I'm joined today by three leaders of Irish industry: Anne O'Leary, CEO of Vodafone Ireland, Paul Kelly, CEO of Fáilte Ireland, and John Power, founder and CEO of Aerogen, who recently won the Business and Finance Elevation Award. Welcome and thank you all for being here. And if I could come to you first, the past 16 months have presented many challenges for Irish businesses of all sizes. What have been the biggest changes within the telecommunications industry?
Well, I suppose like everybody, we've all been affected by this pandemic, small business, big business, families. And like everybody, I suppose our first focus was on our people. We've 3,000 working right across Ireland. It was keeping them safe and actually getting them set up remotely to be able to support our customers. And I think, as everyone knows, the demand for connectivity was never greater. So I suppose in one way that was very purposeful for us. So as somebody said to me, when I don't feel like getting up in the morning, at least I think about I have to support Ireland and businesses and people. So really it was about constantly upgrading and investing in our network, making sure that people had the mobile connectivity, whether that was 4G or 5G, or the fibre connectivity into their homes or businesses. And obviously we would have worked very closely with all of the large businesses in Ireland for them to support their people working remotely. And this is for, government buildings, government agencies, small businesses, large businesses, and even hospitals and healthcare workers. So, it really has been a huge learning for us. And I think, for us, it's really trying to take what the good parts of what we've learned and how we've adapted post-COVID. But really, the 2.3 million customers that we have in Ireland, it was really about supporting them. And that whether that was an elderly person to their grandchildren, or a small business connecting with their customers, or a government agency connecting with their people or society, it has been, quite tremendous really. So, I have, as a leader, I think like all of us, we've learned a lot. Working remotely has been both challenging and invigorating. And if we can take the best of what we've learned, I think that would be great.
Thanks, Anne. And Paul, if I could come to you next with the same question, biggest change in the tourism and travel industry?
Well, we're kind of in some ways at the opposite end of the spectrum from Anne, in terms of, unfortunately, there's never been a time when there's been so little demand for tourism and travel, and not that people haven't wanted to do it, it's just because of public health, it hasn't been appropriate to do it. So, our focus has really been around trying to help the industry survive, because we've had a scenario where, effectively on March 12th last year, the industry was shut down. Some of it kind of reopened again for a couple of months during last summer, but then had to be shut down again. So, and is still, as of today, still closed. And, once again, hoping to get some kind of reopening across the summer. But so it's been, massively challenging. Our focus within Fáilte Ireland has been around trying to help businesses to survive and trying to help them to prepare to recover, and trying to do what we can to be ready for that, for recovery when businesses can safely reopen. And I suppose, as well as kind of on the industry side of things, we sit between industry and government, and as a government agency. And there's never been a time where there's been greater demand on government services and government resources. Everyone is looking, understandably, because of kind of the government had to lead society through the pandemic, that the amount of change that everyone has had to deal with, the amount of new regulations, new ways of operating, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what can be done to help support businesses, what are the different schemes that need to be put in place. So, I know I speak certainly for everyone in Fáilte Ireland, but also for a lot of my other colleagues in other state agencies. We've never seen anything like the pressure and the demand and the work that's been required to try and help lead society through this, and each agency lead their own sectors or their own parts of the jigsaw puzzle through it. So it's been tremendously, challenging from that point of view. But obviously then we have to make sure our people are well enabled to do that, have everyone in that remote working environment, have everyone connected, not just technologically connected, but connected to the strategy, connected to emotionally and mentally connected to everything that's going on, so that everyone can contribute. Obviously, large parts of our own organization had to completely change. We've had people who did the same jobs for 20, 25 years, that at the drop of a hat have had to go and do a completely different job because needs must. We've had people from our organization go and help out with the HSE. We've had people from our organization go and help out with the Department of Social Protection, as well as loads of people in our organization move to different jobs. So managing all that change has been a huge a huge challenge for us as we try to deal with that and support the industry as best we could.
Thanks, Paul. So two very different impacts on two very different industries there. And John, to you in health and medtech, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the past 16 months?
Well, I guess, Aerogen's in a funny world. We span both the pharmaceutics and the medical device world. We're a drug delivery company for acute care. And I guess everybody's aware, obviously, of the work going on around vaccines, but also in the early days, all the work around the supply of product required to treat COVID patients. I mean, ventilators obviously at the front end, followed then by non-invasive ventilation. Our products, so we've seen a big step up in terms of demand. I mean, last March, I was over in Washington with EI to go to the St. Patrick's Day at the White House. It got cancelled the night before. But then by the time I managed to get back to Ireland with all flight delays and everything, really things had turned on its head. We received orders from around the world for our products that in 3 weeks from the middle of March that were equivalent to the first half of the previous year in terms of demand. Now, no one's sitting around with 90% capacity in manufacturing, and this was the same in it was very selective in the medical world, because I mean, if you were involved in elective surgery, for example, that virtually stopped overnight, so no one was going into hospitals to get hips replaced or knees done or other electives. So all the work relating to that finished for medtech companies in that space. It just so happened our space, being aerosol drug delivery for ventilated patients, is what we're the world leader in, and of course that was in huge demand. So yeah, we spent I would think sort of from March to and the following 3 to 4 months, just flat out 24/7, everybody, all hands on deck. We had accountants and scientists down on production lines packing boxes just to try and keep up with demand. And of course it was very difficult because we were trying to ramp demand when it seemed like the world was shutting down around us. Suppliers were shutting. We had to get factories opened up to supply components. We trying to get products shipped around the globe when a lot of our product would go in the hold on passenger aircrafts, and of course they all cancelled, and then the cost and the availability of normal cargo flights soared. Yeah, very, very difficult, challenging times, but we actually got product out would have treated 3 million patients around the world from Aerogen in Galway. So, and many of those would have been COVID patients. So we're very pleased about that.
Thanks, John. And if I could come to Anne next and maybe change tack a little bit. Anne, what have been some of the insights you've gleaned in terms of employee behaviour and engagement over the past year?
Yeah, so I suppose we're learning all the time. We've had regular surveys with our people just to find out what's been working and what hasn't been working. I think there's a lot more focus on employee well-being. Certainly, I think the rise of e-presence and virtual meetings has caused a lot of kind of overload of work, actually. So, and working with other companies, we're seeing the same. So we really worked on policies like right to disconnect, taking regular breaks, actually encouraging people to look after themselves first. Obviously, a lot of our people managers and people have been affected, whether it's childcare at home or where they live. It's more difficult. And I think as leaders, we've learned we have to be much more flexible in how we lead people in different circumstances. And, while we did a survey in terms of what people wanted, 80% said they do want to come back into the office, albeit 2 to 3 days a week. So it's interesting in that working wholly and exclusively at home or remotely, really only 20% said that suited them. And 80% still want that kind of balance. So I think as leaders and as companies, As I said, we're constantly learning and evaluating, but there's much more now about trust and empowerment, a respect for people's time, helping leaders, as I said, look after themselves, but lead in a much more understanding way of the people they're managing and leading. So I think certainly from a Vodafone perspective, we'll be taking a lot of the learnings from our people. People want more communication. We know as well that quality of life has come up a lot for people. I think people have realised that maybe they did spend a lot of their time commuting, or maybe not so effective in terms of their time management, and what does the future look like for them. So look, I think we've always had very good, I would have thought, flexible policies and open policies in Vodafone, but I think this pandemic has opened it to much more in terms of what it could be. But we'll continue communicating, continue to ask, continue to be respectful of different people's needs, and to adapt our policies. Things like right to disconnect, people's well-being. We've definitely seen people being a bit more open to talk about their mental health and well-being, maybe subjects that were seen as taboo in the past, which can only be a good thing. And our role as employers to support our people during those times.
Thanks, Anne. Some very insightful statistics there about employee interest going forward in terms of hybrid working. And Paul, following on from that, I suppose we've seen a considerable shift in the way business can be done in terms of remote working and digitalisation. In a post-vaccinated Ireland, what do you see remaining the same, and what will revert back to what was once considered normal pre-COVID?
I think it's still quite early to try and call that. I think one of the things that we've seen when we've been doing research, both amongst our employees, but more so when we've done research about people's kind of willingness to travel and do things differently, is that sentiment changes very quickly and very dramatically. So, I'm not sure people really will know until we get through COVID how, what will stay and what won't stay. We'll need to be very flexible in terms of how we approach that. Certainly, I think the kind of that phrase of we want to bring back the best of what we've lost and keep the best of what we've learned, I think is the key phrase, and it will require that type of flexibility. I think, and that's been, I suppose that's been one of the key things. I remember one particular conversation I was having with my management team where I said, look, we're talking about kind of enabling people to disconnect and not be working crazy hours and just working, not carving out enough time for rest and relaxation. And I was having one conversation, said, look, I'm really uncomfortable with the fact that there's these conference calls going on at 8:30 at night or 9 o'clock at night. And the response I got was, well, actually, for those people, that's easier hours. That works better for them because they've got childcare issues in terms of they need to manage they've got young kids and they need to manage that time with kids, and this works better for them as a working hour and stuff like that. So I think that it is that flexibility of enabling people to fit work around their lives in a way that works better for them, means that it means that they'll be more productive as well as having a better quality of life. So I think that flexibility is going to be key, that we retain as much of that as we possibly can. And I think that in terms of, I think the other thing that that leaders have learned is, I think we've all learned to communicate a lot more in terms of, we used to have an all-staff conference twice a year, when I would speak to all the staff twice a year at an all-staff conference. I now speak to the staff, all staff, every Friday afternoon at midday. We have an all-staff telecom, and so what was something that happened twice a year now happens once a week. In terms of, and it just really helps to keep people connected and aware of what's going on across the organization. So I think that and obviously in a time of crisis and in a time of great change, really important. I remember, I think it was one of the, I saw something early from one of the successful US military leaders who involved in fighting the Taliban and Al Qaeda, etc., who spoke about, empower people as much as possible, empower the individual units to do their job, but give them the information so that they've got the right context and got the right information. And we very much kind of took that approach. And I think leaders have learned to do that, is give people more information than you probably would have given them in the past, communicate more, and then give them the freedom to get on and make the decisions they need to make, trusting that they have the right contextual information. So I think that flexibility and, better communication flow and better information going through the whole organizations, I think will be, some of the things that I hope we will keep in a post-COVID world.
Thanks, Paul. So flexibility and communication, key guiding principles going forward, and see what behavioural patterns emerge, I suppose, in time. And John, based on your insights of employee behaviour, how do you see the post-vaccinated business world operating? What will we hold on to and what do you think we'll discard?
Yeah, obviously communication's key in any business, always has been. And I'm not sort of ready to throw away the office yet, that's for sure. In our type of business where we're moving, we do all our own R&D, development work, logistics, everything start to finish. And we're a fast-moving, high-growth business where we onboard lots of people, and it's technical integrated work that people need to meet other people and discuss, and there's collaboration between various departments and various disciplines in engineering and sciences. So, to me, that won't be a remote activity. That needs to be done with people collaborating together in person. So I think there's a period, yes, where prior to people being vaccinated, we've obviously put restrictions in place, but as an essential service, we had to carry on working all the way through. I came into the office throughout since last March because all our people working in the factories making our products had to come to work. The people delivering the goods, the van drivers, the people making sandwiches in shops to feed them, stacking the shelves for everybody still had to go to work. So I think often when the government, particularly, people talk about changes to work environment and people working more, from home and having rights to work, but they've got to consider that a lot of people, whether they're builders or shop workers or factory workers, they don't really have that option of working from home. That's not going to change, right? They're going to still come to the place of work. And so I think, again, a bit like Paul says, it's a bit early to say yet. I mean, remote, where I felt probably the biggest challenges were for our people out in the field. About a third of Aerogen's workforce work overseas, throughout the world. And a lot of them work on their own. They're at the commercial side of the business, and they work in areas of, in America, we have about 40 people, I think 40, 50 people, and they're working quite often on their own anyhow. And their interaction was going into the hospitals to meet the caregivers and the physicians and nursing staff. And of course, a lot of that got restricted. So it was a very difficult time, I think, for people who were used to that sort of sales, commercial interaction, clinical interaction. So we spent a lot of time making sure they didn't feel isolated, even though they couldn't do their normal work. But gradually we're seeing more and more access being allowed into the hospitals, which is important, of course, because you've got to be able to share the knowledge of use of the best practice of products with people and training. So I think it's a wait and see, but I would say that don't disregard the people who have to do the jobs, that there isn't any choice on changing their work environment.
Sure, thanks, John. So a real focus on employee well-being there too. changing tack again, and I know we don't have a huge amount of time, but so I want to get through as much as I can. And in your sector, technology is constantly changing. I mean, how do you see the new advancements that you're privy to possibly impacting on the Irish business community?
Yeah, well, hopefully one of the things we have seen is greater collaboration, okay? I mean, it's no more than, we see with the space race or times of war where there's great advancements made in technologies, and this has been no different. I mean, the rapid turnaround of both vaccines across the globe and antiviral treatments and medications getting faster to market. We've had product iterations that have been specific around COVID, and they've been fast-tracked to market in a timeline that would normally take in medical device you say a couple of years going through regulatory processes. We've got them on the market within months. I'd love to see that continue, but I'd be a bit skeptical knowing the way bureaucracy works. It'll probably all revert back to the usual timescales once it's over. But I do think the advancements that we've seen in how fast things can be progressed, if there's a willingness to allow it, and get to market for patient and people's benefit, it will hopefully be a legacy of this.
Thanks for that, John. And Anne, if I could ask you the same question. In your particular area, you're seeing constant advancements in technology. What might be the impact on the business community of those advancements?
Well, look, I think the digitalization of businesses and what people have achieved in the past year, I mean, people have said it's accelerated 10 years. I mean, even in our own businesses, with our shops closed, how we had to invest in digital journeys and digital experiences for our customers. We're seeing the same right across the business sector in Ireland, from the smallest micro business right up. And I suppose at the core of all that is the connectivity piece. Obviously, the rollout of 5G is absolutely key, and we'll continue to do that. We were the first to launch it with robotic surgery, actually, in University College Cork, and the Internet of Things, where everything will now be connected. But I think more importantly as well is the rollout of remote hubs. We, with the ESB, rolled out 15 hubs with our Cyro, and people will have known of Skibbereen and Ludgate and Skibbereen, Tralee, Drogheda, Cavan. So these are locations where small businesses can set up and work in these rural towns, or people who work for other companies can go there and work in a hub as well. And if you think about that, that really is about access to talent, access to more people. It's all about rejuvenating rural Ireland. And obviously the government and the Department of Rural Affairs just announced over 300 hubs right across Ireland, where they're going to bring the national broadband, again, into libraries, sports centres, but buildings in these locations. And again, I think this will allow businesses again maybe to start up, but also people that may not have been able to work for certain companies could now do it from a location. So look, I think and actually Stephen Kinsella from the University of Limerick did some research with us on Irish SMEs, and we are mid-table in terms of digitalisation. So we have more to do, and there will be a lot of government incentives to help these small businesses get online, to digitise, to find the tools and the skills that are needed if we really want kind of future-ready Ireland that's able to compete. But really, it means that people can work from anywhere, actually, for any company and be based anywhere. So I really think the role of digitalisation and technology in Ireland is a key advantage for us that we need to absolutely grab.
Thanks, Anne. So very positive advancements ahead. And I think I might have time for one more question. Paul, I'd love to ask you about the travel and tourism sector. I suppose in particular, what is needed to provide stimulation to the sector right now, other than the very obvious of restrictions being lifted?
Yeah, I think that's the key answer is in terms of the health position to allow the public health is to be in a position to allow the industry to safely reopen. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I suppose from an Irish perspective, we've got to bear in mind that before COVID, 70% of the tourism economy was based on overseas visitors. And it's not just about, it is certainly about rural areas, but it's not just about rural areas. There's, tens of thousands of people employed in Dublin, in Cork, in Limerick, Galway, etc., in the tourism industry, in both leisure and business tourism. I think that the key thing is for that to be able to be opened as soon as it's safe to do so. I think that's the key thing, and to help businesses to survive until then. I think, just to build on what Anne was saying on the digitization, I mean, that's absolutely key. And we've done the exact same work. And as a government agency, we've started that process for the tourism sector, where we've identified that we're not best in class, particularly our activities and attractions sector. Their digital presence is not up to the standard of some of the other destinations, and they're the reasons people come to Ireland. So we're working hard with those and providing funding and training and support, and working hard with those guys to bring them up to the world-class standard in terms of where people can find them online, because if you're not online, you don't exist now. We're all doing so much of our research online, so people can find them online, and then that proves to be the inspiration to come to Ireland when it's safe to do so, or the reason to travel to a different part of Ireland than maybe you've been to before. So a huge amount of work being done in that space. But I think, digitization and sustainability would be the other key thing in terms of from I think from all industries' point of view, and particularly travel and tourism, that the Climate Action Bill is an incredibly profound piece of legislation that's come in. I think it's going to impact, I don't think people realize how much it's going to impact all of our lives, in terms of the types of targets that are there that we need to achieve. And it is something the visitors want as well, and people want. So, I think they're kind of the two big things going forward.
Thanks, Paul. Very practical advice there. And on that note, we've come to the end of our session. Thank you to our panel for your time and insights. And to those watching, be sure to join the conversation online by using the hashtag Rebooting Ireland. With many other great talks lined up today, check out the agenda for more info. Thanks again for joining.